Imagine you are taking a casual swim on a hot summer afternoon, wading waist deep into a calm, murky river to cool off. You feel the soft silt squishing between your toes, the warm water against your chest, and the peace of a quiet environment. Suddenly, the mud explodes. A heavily armored, serrated claw the exact size of a human arm shoots out of the darkness and violently clamps down on your torso. You are not being attacked by a rogue crocodile or a lost shark. You have just been ambushed by a scorpion the size of a great white shark. This is not a horror movie pitch. This was the terrifying, everyday reality of the early Devonian period, roughly 390 million years ago, when the apex predators of Earth's waterways were gigantic, heavily armored sea scorpions. The undisputed king of this nightmare ecosystem was Jaekelopterus rhenaniae. It was the absolute largest arthropod to ever exist. It breaks every rule we thought we knew about how bugs evolve, and its existence proves that nature used to have a twisted sense of humor. Big bugs. Bad news. To understand the incomprehensible scale of Jaekelopterus, we have to look at how paleontologists found it. We did not uncover a massive, perfectly preserved skeleton waiting to be dusted off. Instead, in a quarry near Prüm in western Germany, within the early Devonian Vilvoord Lagerstätte, researchers unearthed a single terrifying fossil. It was a chelicera, the scientific term for the predatory claw, and this one claw measured a staggering 46 centimeters in length. That is roughly 18 inches of biological weaponry. Because the claw was actually missing a quarter of its original length, scientists calculated that a complete appendage would have reached 45.5 to 46 centimeters long. Just the grasping, killing claw of this animal was the size of your entire arm. Scaling up from this monstrous appendage using the proportions of closely related pterygoid genera like Acutiramus and Pterygonus, paleontologists realized they were looking at a creature with an average body length of roughly 2.5 meters. That is over 8 feet long. 8 feet of armor plating, compound eyes, and serrated death. It is officially the largest arthropod ever discovered. It comfortably dethrones the giant carboniferous millipede Arthropleura and makes modern king crabs look like cheap toys. Math is fun, especially when it proves you would be eaten. You might desperately hope a beast this large lived at the bottom of the abyssal ocean. Unfortunately, the opposite is true. The sediment matrix where this monstrous claw was found tells a disturbing environmental story. The greenish-gray siltstone indicates this fossil was deposited in a highly restricted water body, devoid of fully marine organisms. Jaekelopterus did not patrol the deep ocean. It lived in brackish lagoons, coastal swamps, and shallow river deltas. It hunted in the shallow, murky water where humans love to wade. Its limbs were weak compared to its massive bulk, meaning it could not support its crushing weight on dry land without the buoyant assistance of water. It was restricted to an aquatic life, but it absolutely dominated those shallows. With advanced compound eyes providing high visual acuity, it was a hyper-lethal visual hunter. It was the ultimate ambush predator. It would lie perfectly camouflaged in the river mud, waiting for any unsuspecting creature to drift too close. Then, total devastation. The biomechanics of how Jaekelopterus killed its prey are a masterclass in predatory efficiency. The giant pterygoid eurypterids were at the top of the food chain in their habitats for approximately 37 million years, and they achieved this dominance by evolving an incredibly specialized set of raptorial, prey-catching organs. The massive claws of Jaekelopterus were not just big, they were heavily sclerotized and covered in numerous upright denticles, essentially acting as armor-piercing spikes. These denticles were striated longitudinally and demonstrated positive allometric growth, meaning that as the animal got bigger, its weapons got disproportionately more lethal. When an early armored fish or smaller sea scorpion swam past, Jaekelopterus would launch a rapid strike. The 46-centimeter chelicerae would extend, adding nearly another full meter to the animal's strike range, and violently snap shut, interlocking the scimitar-shaped terminal denticles. Once captured, the powerful claws would simply tear the victim into manageable pieces. These shredded chunks of meat were then passed down to the animal's mouth, located on the underside of its heavily armored head. It was basically a giant underwater woodchipper. Brutal, efficient, disgusting. But the biggest mystery surrounding Jaekelopterus is not how it killed, but how it managed to get so impossibly huge in the first place. For decades, whenever we talked about giant prehistoric bugs, the scientific explanation was always the same: oxygen. During the Carboniferous period, which came long after the Devonian, Earth's atmosphere was flooded with a massive surplus of oxygen, allowing terrestrial insects to grow to gigantic proportions. But Jaekelopterus evolved millions of years earlier, and it lived underwater. The elevated atmosphere atmospheric oxygen hypothesis does not apply here. Aquatic gigantism operates by a completely different set of biological rules. Paleontologists believe this terrifying size was driven by a localized evolutionary arms race. In these restricted estuarine and deltaic environments, there was reduced competition and an abundance of prey, allowing the pterygonids to simply keep growing as long as their exoskeletons could physically support the high energy costs of molting. They basically found a glitch in the ecosystem. No natural predators, infinite food, maximum growth. Jaekelopterus belonged to the family Pterygotidae, a highly derived and specialized clade of Eurypterids. Through phylogenetic analysis, scientists determined that Jaekelopterus is the sister taxon to another terrifying genus of giant sea scorpions called Acutiramus, making it one of the most evolutionarily advanced members of its lineage. It was the absolute peak of arthropod design, but being the biggest does not make you invincible to the slow machinery of deep time. The very things making Jaekelopterus a successful apex predator eventually contributed to its downfall. As the world changed and early-jawed vertebrates began to rapidly evolve, the competitive landscape of the rivers shifted violently. These new fish were faster, more agile, and structurally supported by internal skeletons rather than heavy, cumbersome exoskeletons that required massive amounts of energy to molt. The evolutionary arms race that had crowned Jaekelopterus eventually left it behind in the mud. Evolution is ruthless. Adapt or die. Looking at the existence of Jaekelopterus rhenaniae shatters our modern perception of the animal kingdom. We are conditioned to view arthropods as small pests we can eliminate with a rolled-up newspaper. But the fossil record of the Devonian rivers forces us to confront a reality where the roles were violently reversed. The largest arthropod ever to have evolved did not need to hide in the cracks of a foundation. It was a 2.5-meter-long apex predator that ruled its environment with absolute authority, tearing apart early vertebrates with scimitar-shaped claws that dwarfed human limbs. It dominated the shallow waters for millions of years, acting as the king of an alien Earth before the first dinosaur took a breath. So the next time you find a small spider in your house and feel a flash of fear, remember how lucky you are. You do not have to worry about the 8-foot nightmare lurking in a primordial swamp, waiting to pull you under. At least, not anymore. Sleep tight.